Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Asher Marketing Podcast. This podcast is brought to you by Asher Agency, a full-service marketing agency with offices in Indiana, West Virginia, and Washington, D.C. For nearly 50 years, Asher has helped our clients tell their stories, reach customers and prospects, and stand out from the crowd. To learn more about how we can help your company, visit asheragency.com or contact us at hello@asheragency.com. My guest is Cordell England. Cordell, how you doing?
Hey, I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing great. Well, thank you so much for doing this. I appreciate you reaching out and promoting your interest in being on the podcast. Yeah. I've heard a little bit about your story, and I'm eager to jump right in. And as we usually do, I want to hear a little bit about your career path, because like some of our guests, it's not linear. It's not like you were a kid and you knew you wanted to be in marketing and now there you are. So take us through that a little bit. When did you start thinking about careers, and what did you initially think about, and then how did you pivot into the marketing world?
So after I graduated high school and I got into college, I originally was an economics major with a minor in finance.
All right.
And then when you're a first-year student at IPFW, they have a class there called J100, which is... The advisor is Buck Jordan.
Yep.
I don't know if you've ever met him. Probably.
I have, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's been a while since I've seen him.
Yeah, me and him are really close. We talk quite a bit. And as we were going through the guest speakers, I realized marketing was kind of my thing of what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
I realized that finance wasn't for me.
Yeah.
I wasn't really much of a numbers crunching guy all the time.
Yep.
And then economics, I realized there really wasn't an occupational outlook for me that I had a lot of interest in.
Yeah.
And then once I got into some marketing classes, it really drove my interest in terms of consumer behavior, right? What makes people tick?
Yeah.
What drives people to like something or not like something? And then when I realized the type of data that you can capture from, good or bad data,
Sure.
right? And the changes that you can make from that, that's kind of what got me into it. And really just being a people person.
Yeah.
I love to talk.
Yeah.
I love to get to know people and really just help people too. It's
Yeah.
kind of one of those things that, I thought for a long time I was going to go into pharmaceutical sales.
Yep.
Just because I had a lot of interest in places like Zimmer Biomed and Depew and things like that. And then once I got into it, I was like, I don't really know if the medical field is for me. And then once I kind of got through school, I realized I kind of like the logistics of like automotive and manufacturing and industrial and things like that. So as a precursor, that kind of, led me into what I do today. But it started off as economics and finance.
Yeah.
And then I wanted to do pharmaceutical sales.
Yeah.
And then I thought, I wanted to be a teacher for a little bit.
Okay.
And then I kind of mishmashed it all into one thing and just realized that through my idea of analyzing data and reaching goals and helping people within or on the outside of a company is something that I want to do.
Yeah. Well, and what you said about it being sort of both an art and a science is one of the things that's always appealed to me is that you do have data to work with. You're not operating completely in a vacuum, but there's still a creative side to it where you do have to use psychology and you have to use communication skill if you're going to get anywhere. So it sounds like you and I are a lot alike in that way, and in the fact that we took an indirect path to get there. There's a story you told me before we hit record, if you wouldn't mind repeating it, about how you ended up at what was once known as IPFW.
Yeah.
How did you get into the Dormer School of Business?
So, like I told you, I played sports in high school. So I was going through taking my SATs and stuff, and I was reaching the deadline. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't know where I wanted to go to school. I had an idea. I wanted to stay close. So I was like, my friends are going to IPFW. I have some family that lives there, so I'm going to apply there. Yeah. I got home really late one night after a game, and I originally was going to do general studies because I didn't know what I wanted to do. Yep. And apparently, I accidentally submitted, the tab was right below the general studies, and I submitted to Dormer School of Business. Yeah. And June came around, I got a piece of mail and said, "You've been accepted into the Dormer School of Business at IPFW." And I was like, looked at my dad, and he was like, "Hey, you got accepted into this." And I was like, "I didn't do that." And I was like, "That's, I think they got the wrong guy." He's like, "Well, they got the last name right." And I was like, "Well, I'm going to give him a call." So, I called the offices and I said, "No, you applied here." And I said, looked at my dad. We were talking about it over dinner that one night.
Yeah.
And because he didn't know what I wanted to do either, you know. And so I sat there and I told him, I was like, well, I guess I'm going for business.
Yeah.
So, and then that's kind of what led me into, you know, since I didn't know what I wanted to do, I was like, well, I mean, there's no point in not going, right?
Yeah.
You know, I didn't know what I wanted to do anyway, so
Sure.
I figured I'd give it a shot.
Yeah.
And then that's where I met Buck Jordan, and I had that J100 class, which was super insightful.
Yeah.
It helped me learn about a lot of different careers because honestly, I chose economics because I think I liked it, and clearly I didn't. But yeah, that's kind of one thing I like. Whenever I do public speaking and I talk to students and stuff, I've talked to Buck's class. I talked to some kids at Carroll. And I tell them that story all the time, and they're kind of like, their eyes are always like, whoa.
Yeah.
They're like, yeah, that's kind of crazy.
Well, I think it's an important message, you know, because I think there's a decent number of young people listening to this podcast to try to figure out, like, how do you get into a marketing career?
Yeah.
And a lot of times I think they'll look at someone like you who's established in marketing, and they'll think that that was always the plan. And sometimes it's just luck. You know, there's a story, I don't know if I've ever shared it on the podcast before, but I was actually I was the world's worst high school student, so I was lucky to even be college bound. But originally the college I was going to go to was New Hampshire College. I grew up in Massachusetts. Oh. And I went so far as to meet my college roommate to be by phone. We had a long conversation, and I can tell you 2 minutes into this conversation, I said to myself, I'm never going to meet this guy. I'm never going to this school. And as it turns out, I didn't.
Right.
And, you know, and the story goes on from there that I had no idea what I wanted to do, even after completing my bachelor's degree.
Yeah.
So the message is, even when you think you have it figured out, be open to some shifts. And it's always great when you have someone like in your life, Buck Jordan, who can help kind of guide you.
Yeah, he was
but
great.
There's a little bit of luck involved too.
Yeah, there was definitely some luck involved. Very lucky in that.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about what you're doing today, because you work for an entity called Wearco. Am I pronouncing it? Wearco. I got it wrong. All right.
It's
I got it right before we hit record.
Close. That's closer than usually what a lot of people say, but we've heard it all. So
Okay.
We've heard it all.
So tell me a little bit about your organization and your role there.
Yeah. So I am their first ever in-house marketing person.
Okay.
So, but a little bit over about the company. They are a stainless steel fabricator and supplier for a process called heat treating. Okay. So, but we do it for all different types of industries across the U.S.
Okay.
And so agricultural, construction, your commercial heat treaters, aerospace, all of those things. Basically, heat treating is they use a metallurgical process, and what it is they have big, huge industrial furnaces. Basic ones are what they call a batch furnace.
Okay.
And the easiest way to explain is there's so many things in the world that are heat treated, we just don't know it.
Yeah.
Doorknobs, certain parts of pens, brake calipers, rotors, all those things. But like, for example, in the automotive industry, whenever they heat treat brake rotors, they put it into a basket fabrication, and then they roll it through 2,220 degree, heat.
Yep.
And then it gets really, really hot, and then there's a batch of oil under it, and then they quench it and they harden it. It's like, in medieval times, whenever you see a sword get really hot, and then they hit it with a hammer and they dip it in oil and harden it.
And this is too, now you will learn very quickly that I am ignorant of many things, including this, but this is to make it more durable, to make it stronger.
Yeah, yep, to make it stronger. Okay. So then where we come into play is we don't make, the rotors or the things that those industries are. We make the equipment that goes through those furnaces. Okay. So there's different types of furnaces, and I'm still learning all the sciences by means. There's people who have worked for us for, 27, 30 years, and just with the knowledge of metallurgy alone, it can be a whole thing in itself.
Yeah, and you've only been doing this since July of last year, so you've learned quite a bit in that time. Did you have any knowledge of this prior to starting the job?
No, I did not. So the way the facilities are set up, we have 3 facilities in Avila, and then we have a full working foundry in Champaign, Illinois, and then we recently just acquired another foundry in Waupaca, Wisconsin. So every part of our business is vertically integrated. It's family owned, and everything is domestic to the U.S.
Okay.
So we don't outsource anything.
Okay.
But it's really cool because there's a lot of there's a lot of different things that go into just making a metal fabrication, the certain grades of steel that you have to take to make it so it's durable.
Yeah.
Different types of grades require different types of heat.
Yeah.
And then that, when it comes into play, there's different types of furnaces that produce different types of heat or levels of heat. So then you have to mix and match metals and things. And that's where the foundry and the metallurgical process comes in to make that metal.
Okay.
But yeah, so we make a bunch of different types of things that go inside these furnaces, whether it be a carrier, right? Some sort of carrier to carry the whatever company's products through the furnace, or we also make something we call a radiant tube, which helps radiate the gas, the heat through the furnace, and then it gets really, really, really hot. So we have to make sure that's extremely durable, so it doesn't break.
Sure.
Yep.
Okay. So you are the first person to be doing this job. What's that been like? What are the good sides of being the first in a position, and what are some of the challenges you've run into?
I will, preface with everything that I get to work on there is a lot of fun. I mean, it's a blast just because first and foremost, I have confidence from my employers, right? And they trust me. So that's a big thing going forward whenever you're trying to create something from scratch. Sitting with them and their strategic team and being a part of a lot of the meetings and roundtables, saying, what's our marketing push? What's the market penetration look like to share? It's my goal is to, create a marketing plan moving forward for the next 3, 5, 7 years and create that outlook and create a plan for it. So that's been really fun. The challenge of it is, when you work in this type of industry, I mean, there's so many things that are proprietary, right? You can't just walk into somebody's heat treating facility and say, hey, my name is Cordell. Can I go take a picture of your equipment real quick? So it's not really... it's not super easy in that regard. So whenever you do your own products, you constantly have to, I mean, as you know, right? Somebody always asks me, what I do for marketing. And I tell them, try taking the same story or the same picture and creating a different message or persona or feeling every single time, multiple times, right? And that's where the challenge can come into play because, if someone isn't necessarily interested in a piece of metal, right? Or something that looks like a basket or a tube, how do you entice them? Right. And that's the challenge. And it's fun because then that's where, before we started filming, we were talking about kind of like the psychology of it. It's like, okay, what makes these people tick? Not, of course, the analytical data of it, if they go in and they click it and they view it and what they like, what they don't like, the feedback, that's all great. But what's the behavior on before they go to the screen, right? Like what's those repetitive behaviors that causes them to like something different rather than it just being two pieces of metal that look the same. Why this one over that one? So, and that's where the challenges are for sure.
Yeah, well, one of our previous guests, Andrew Booth, who works for MedPro, he said something that has stuck with me from the day he said it. He mentioned that in today's environment, it's telling the same story over and over again, but doing it a variety of different ways because you never know how people are going to intersect with the message, when they're going to intersect with the message. Exactly. But if you put it out there in enough different ways, eventually it'll get to the right folks, especially if you're good at targeting and you know your customer really well. So the business has been around for how long?
Over 50 years now. So I think it's technically 56 now, 55, 56.
So why do you think there wasn't a marketing person there before? Any insight into that?
Yeah, I think it's because we're a smaller company, right? And I think it's just one of those things where we were really good at well, first of all, word of mouth, right? We were very good at, we did a lot of stuff the old-fashioned way for a long time. Trade shows, phone calls.
So sales has always been in the DNA of the business.
Sales has always been the real push for the Worko brand. I think it's just now they've decided to, we've been growing and we want to hit a bigger market, and we've kind of realized that, you can't always just do that by traditional just word of mouth. It might take too long. Yeah. So we know that we've seen competitors, go in and try and do those things. And we want to try to be more proactive than reactive, especially in this regard, because right now in the way the world is, how marketing works in general, it can be so quick to where something can take off.
Yeah.
And if you have a solid foundation, it can grow pretty quick. And, that's our plan.
Yeah. So as a one-person department,
you
have to do a lot of different things.
Right.
So I'll ask you a question about what you have to concede in that world. In other words, you can't do everything.
Right.
You've got trade shows. You probably are doing social media in some form. You're probably doing paid search in some form or other digital media. You might be doing some trade advertising. What is important but is not something you can either get to or prioritize? And I ask you this question because I think a lot of marketers, it's a relief for them to hear from other marketers that you can't do it all when we're expected to kind of do it all.
Yeah, that's a really interesting question.
Well, let's focus on social media, right?
Yeah.
Because you could, in theory, you could be on Facebook and Instagram and X, Twitter, call it what you will.
Yeah.
LinkedIn, you could be on TikTok, you could be on Snapchat, you could be on YouTube, you could have a blog, you could be on Threads, you could be on, Pinterest for that matter. So what platforms are you focusing on, and what are your thoughts on why you leave other stuff out?
I would say right now the main focus one was I mainly focus with LinkedIn right now just because there was already some of a presence before I started,
and because you're B2B.
Yeah, right. So there's that, and we have a Facebook and Instagram that I've started. We see some, but it's still very new. Yeah. Obviously, it's slow growing there, but it's positive. Like, for example, I stay away from Twitter because to me, it seems like it'd be beneficial, but really in the world of Twitter or X, it's one big giant conversation, right? And it's very hard to find a niche conversation about heat treating on Twitter, right?
For sure.
And I've already tried it. I've been a student myself. I've went on to it and looked up various different ways to try to find a conversation about it on there. It's not there.
Yeah.
And it's hard to talk about. So that's why LinkedIn is really the best way. You have your content, you have your people that are knowledgeable of the content, and then you also have your ability to reach different connections. And that's one of the quickest ways to grow. So.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and on a platform like Twitter, there's an expectation if you start a conversation, you're going to be present for a while, and you have other stuff to do.
Correct. Yeah, there's no way I could have, John Doe from Virginia start a conversation with me on Twitter and then be able to carry it on for the next 2 weeks or however.
For sure.
It wouldn't be possible.
So what are some of the priorities you're focused on right now? You mentioned a long-term marketing plan, and obviously learning the industry is part of your job right now. Yeah. But what are some of the key things you're focused on in the near term?
Our digital marketing strategy, for sure. The campaigns, the SEO, Google Analytics, getting those things up to par, and setting those records straight, if you will, so that way there's accurate data that we can work with and then make strategic decisions from.
Okay. All right. So in terms of all of the different things you could be doing in digital media, I would guess that paid search is a big part of the equation because people may not know that they're looking for your company, but they know the products they're looking for. Is that accurate?
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
It is. There's a lot of, when it comes to heat treating industry, it's across, it's interesting because it varies, right? But paid search is definitely a form of it, but there's a lot of organic growth that can come from there because the words are so unique.
Yeah, for sure.
So not very often, if you're not talking specifically with a metallurgical process or heat treating, there's somebody that's not going to say a cast radiant tube.
Yep.
Right. So you can kind of use both. Yep. That's kind of a good part about it. Yeah. But paid search for sure.
Yeah. Well, and the good news is not a lot of competition for those terms. So the prices tend to be a little lower.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, correct me if this is wrong, but I would guess, where you've got such a presence in a villa, there's also probably a community relations aspect to the work that you do.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about that because it's probably magnified by the fact the business is been around for as long as it has.
Yeah.
How do you balance sort of that community relations piece of the work with the more hard and fast marketing stuff?
Well, I kind of divvy it up into a personal perspective too, is because I like to meet people.
Yeah.
I like to help people out. So sometimes, I'll go out and I'll seek, volunteer stuff for the company.
Yeah.
Just because our company is big into that. We are a giving company, right? We love to help people out. We love to help schools. We love to help the community out. I think that there's certain portions of it. It can seem stressful, right? Sometimes it might seem like it's not very important, but at the end of the day, that stuff is needed within a company. I think it's good for our companies and other ones to do those type of things, because I think it makes you appreciate the relationships that you have. But we're big in the Fort Wayne community. We do stuff for the Philharmonic. We do stuff for Bishop Dwenger. We do stuff for a bunch of stuff in Avila. Communities, the schools, the sports programs, Big Brothers, Big Sisters. We just recently did an event for that. I think it was Bowling for Kids' Sakes is what it's called. But yeah.
Yeah. Well, and another piece of that is just making sure the name is known from a recruitment standpoint. There's a company here in Fort Wayne, I won't disclose who it is, but they've been in business for more than 100 years, and they had always been very quiet in the local market because their philosophy was our customers aren't here. So, we don't really need to do a lot in the community because that's not where we're promoting our business. And what they found out is when competition for talent changed and became a lot more competitive, they realized they were at a disadvantage because while they had been here for a long time, prospective employees didn't know anything about them. And they were looking past what was a really good employer to go work at other places. So, if you can take it too far, of course, but if you strategically position yourself in the community, you can reach a lot of people, not just prospective customers, but prospective employees who may think well of you when they're looking for a job down the line.
Absolutely.
And I would imagine that, in the manufacturing world, it's tough to find talented people.
Yeah, we see that pretty often, actually, in a couple of specific instances. Whenever we do trade shows, for example, whenever we went to the Detroit trade show, a bunch of the people who were vendors there, they brought in kids from all over the states, and they were engineers wanting to be metallurgists, engineers, whatever it may be, right, within the manufacturing industry. And I had 10 or 12 kids, come up, ask for my LinkedIn connection, get to talk to them, get to know them. And that's something that I never really saw before until I started working there because, I've been to career fairs, right? We all see that. So when you're a student, the perspective is a little different. But when you're working within the company and you see a bunch of different students come up to you and talk to you about what your company does and what you do in the industry, especially when it's such a niche industry. It's really cool to see.
Yeah, for sure. So let's talk about trade shows for a minute because that's a different animal altogether.
Yeah.
Did you have any experience prior to this job in working on trade show materials and trade show strategy and all that?
A little bit. Whenever I worked at Vorderman, I would help them with certain events and things like that. When I was at Do It Best, we went to a couple of the markets. But this is my first time completely heading it. Right? So from the registration to the payments to the locking in the certain dates and making sure all the marketing materials on time for shipment, getting all their setup, tear down. It's a lot of fun, but it's a lot.
Yeah. Is there anything that you've taken away from that is worth sharing in terms of how to be successful at a trade show?
So one thing a couple things. Create multiple checklists.
Okay.
I think that's very important. Just for speaking prospectively from my industry, because we always we have a bunch of different merchandise, that we take and things like that. But you can never be too sure. So especially when you're taking, if your banners, equipment, if you don't have one thing, an extra outlet, if you have to bring it, it's always beneficial. Yeah. Double checklists are very important. Yeah. And then I would say the second thing is register whenever they say the deadline is always, whenever they say the opening is for registration, hotel booking, whenever they need to have your portal open for employment information, descriptions, whatever it may be, whatever they give you a timeline, open it up the first day that it opens. And even if you can't get everything done due to, if you don't know how many people are coming,
Yep.
or if you're not quite sure where your bosses want you to stay yet. At least you need to go in there, familiarize yourself with the portal and what they're asking, because the date comes up like that.
Okay.
And the sooner you can get everything done, the better. So if you know that you have a trade show coming up, I would personally advise having a couple of roundtables and try to get as much information as ready for you as possible, so that way you can save some time and get as much stuff done as possible.
Yeah, that's great advice. I especially appreciate the advice about checklist. It's almost more important as you get more experienced, because that's when you get complacent.
Yeah.
You're like, I've done this 100 times. I know what to take with me. And then you get to the trade show and it's like, oh no, I forgot an extension cord and power is way down the hall.
It's always like, I always talk about, I always compare trade shows to like some big event that you're throwing for a family member. Like, you just want it to go perfect.
Yeah.
Like, it's got to go great. Every step has to be here. And more times than not, you're always going to forget something. But I think if you give yourself grace and double check yourself as much as you can, I think it always works out fine.
Well, I think checklists are underutilized everywhere.
They are.
I've been doing this job. I've been at Asher for almost 20 years now. And there are things I try to go on memory, and when I try to go on memory, it does not go as well as when I follow, like, here are the things that you think you know, but when you write it down. I even have checklists for things like, here's what I need to take if I'm going from home to the gym to work. And all it does is you just need one time when you forget your underwear and you say, yeah, that checklist is pretty important. So, yeah.
That'll work.
So it works at trade shows. It's important in life, too.
Absolutely.
All right.
Absolutely.
So let's pivot. This is a great time to pivot to a few quick hit questions. You've talked a lot about some of the things you've learned in your new job, but tell me, Cordell, what's the one piece of advice you would give someone if they were either just getting started out in a marketing career or looking to pivot? What do you think is most important about having a successful, fulfilling career?
First of all, I think wherever you're at, you have to understand that it takes time.
Yeah.
When I was younger, I was so hungry to be quote unquote successful.
Yeah.
Right. I was so, I would work myself up so much to be like, I'd constantly compare myself and be like, well, he's got this and he has that, or she's got this opportunity. And why don't I, you know what I mean? I would constantly be comparing myself, and it all takes time. I think if you do your homework and trust yourself, right, you have to have confidence in yourself.
Yeah.
That's where it all starts.
Yeah.
But I think if you understand it takes time, soak in as much as you can and be present all the time. And I think sometimes my brain is wired a little differently. I view data in everything, whether it be, I have a saying in my head, some people might not like it, but to me, I don't think there's good data or bad data. I just think there's data, because whatever data you get, you can analyze it and you see a trend. When you have a trend, you can make something positive out of it, even if it seems bad. You can fix it, right? But I think you just have to put yourself out there. You have to ask questions. You have to ask questions. You have to ask to shadow people. You have to ask to talk to guest speakers, talk to your professors, and try things. Marketing is a vast and constantly growing field that it's not like there's four things that you can do as a marketer. For me, some people, might not like the fact that I do that, might not like the fact that you have to do a lot of products and then handle print and social and digital marketing and phone calls and work with sales and things like that. I like it just because I like having multiple stuff to do.
Yeah.
Some people in marketing might just like working with social media.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of different niches out there for everybody. I just think you have to give yourself grace and give yourself time to understand the type of learner that you are, and it'll kind of just take its course for you.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice. And I think it's especially important for people who are just getting started or fairly new into a marketing career to look at positions where you get to do a lot of different things. My first marketing job was with one of Parkview's hospitals in one of the smaller communities where Parkview operated. And as a result, I got to do a little bit of everything. I came into it as a writer, so I was writing, but I was doing graphic design, had never done graphic design. The graphic designers who work here at Asher would tell you it's a good thing I'm not doing graphic design today. but I did it enough that I kind of understand that world a little bit, not nearly as much as the true professionals, but I have a little bit of insight. I was doing photography. I'm the world's worst photographer. I was doing media relations. But when you get that continuum and you understand different facets, I think it gives you a better understanding of how it all works together. And maybe gives you an appreciation for people who are truly skilled at the things that you're not skilled at, because there's a lot of them that I could claim not being skilled at. But I think it's be open to that possibility of a multifaceted job. Even if it seems daunting, it might open some new doors for you for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely.
So the second quick hit question has to do with a myth or misconception about your work. And it could just be pronouncing the name of your business correctly. But what's something that you think is misunderstood about the work that you do, the company you work for, anything like that, or it could be just marketing in general, that you want to correct, or it could be something that's underappreciated that you think deserves more attention?
Well, I think there's a couple things, but I think one of the main one is I'll go back to like when I was in college, my professors, they always lumped in sales and marketing together. And I don't think they're the same thing. I think they have a lot of similarities, but they're not a one-to-one. I think, marketing, you inform a bigger audience to come to, your business, your products, who you are as a company. Sales helps you close that, and obviously both your goal is to help drive people in. Both your goals is to create revenue for your company. That's what everybody wants to do when they work for a company, but the processes are different. And I think that's one of the biggest things for me that was like exhausting when I was going through college and trying to find internships and things. Everything, when I said I was a marketing major, everybody was like, well, you're going to be cold calling, or, or you're going to be working in insurance, or you're going to be doing this. And I was like, I didn't go to sales for college. I went for marketing. To me, marketing is it's not all sales, right? It's a part of it. It helps drive sales. But I think there's one of those things, while I'm here, I think with my initiatives and my efforts to push forward with what we're doing as a company, I think I'll be able to actually create that line and showcase that, sales is a big part of our company, and we've grown because of it. But when you take different processes from marketing and you take the data and you put efforts towards the digital side of things, and you analyze things a lot harder, not just how you talk to people or not just how you closed, but to preface that, where's the data that says, okay, why did or didn't you close? If you don't have that data, let's analyze that.
Yeah, well, it goes back to something you said earlier that I think is an important point, and it's kind of reflective of how our digital team here at Asher works, is we want to know when something isn't working. Right. Because that's information, right?
Exactly.
If we run a campaign and it falls flat, we would rather kind of confront that honestly and say, okay, now let's take a look. Was it the creative? Was it the message wasn't right? Was it that the tactics we were using weren't the right tactics? Was it a matter of timing? Was there not enough budget? And I think it's really important in 2024 to not make excuses for that, not try to hide that, but to say, hey, this is potentially very useful information. We don't want to do it again and make the same mistake, but what can we learn from that?
Yeah. So, and like I said, I think they complement each other, but I think, if we're talking about advice for kids, going through college or starting a career in marketing isn't always sales. You can help sales, but don't think just because you're going for a marketing degree that you're going to be cold calling.
Yeah. Well, and an important thing too is to give sales its due, because it is a real skill.
Correct.
It's a skill I don't have.
Exactly. No, absolutely.
So I really respect people who do it well. So let me put you on the spot for a second with a follow-up question.
Okay.
So, the business you're in, marketing is part of the equation of getting customers to buy. Tell them the story, right? Why us? Why are we better? Why are we different? Sales is part of the story, the relationship piece, and product is part of the story. If you don't have a good product, none of the other stuff matters. Which of those three do you think is most important? Like, I
plead the fifth.
Can a great salesperson overcome so-so marketing and a so-so product, or is that true only for either product or marketing?
I think, man, that is a tough question. I think if you have if you were to have a so-so product,
Yeah.
okay, and you have a great salesman, I think you could get them to buy the so-so product
Once.
Right.
Yeah.
I think you could get them to buy the product,
Yeah.
but to have it be reoccurring, I don't think it'd be feasible.
Yeah.
I think everything that comes back to creating revenue for a company, for an individual, whoever, whatever it may be, you have to have confidence in your product, and it has to be a valuable product.
Yeah,
It has to be a high quality product.
Yeah.
And you don't want to hide the fact of what it takes to make the high quality product. You don't want to misconstrued of what it takes or what it can do, right? To try to get a sale. Mm-hmm. But if you have a great product, it's a lot easier to explain why it's great rather than try to step around something that's so-so to get somebody to buy it.
Yeah. No, I think that's a great response.
They're all very important.
Oh, for
right?
sure.
But I think that would be my take on it.
Yeah. Well, that was a great response to a tough question that you didn't know was coming. So good job.
No, around the spot. I like it. I like it.
So one last question for you, Cordell. So when it comes to the tools you use at work, and this could be something really simple, it could be something really complex, what's something that helps you do what is a very multifaceted job, a job that's kind of new to you? What helps you get the job done that you think deserves a shout out? What's a tip or a trick or a tool or a hack that you use that's important to you?
I would say, I'll speak just for my industry alone of what I'm working in, but I would say LinkedIn, honestly.
Yeah.
LinkedIn they have, I think it's 1 billion or a little over 1 billion members worldwide now, 133,000 schools accredited to it.
Yep.
And as we were talking earlier, future employees, that's huge.
Yeah.
But just the algorithm that it uses and the connection that you can make from it is huge. Yeah. I mean, and the type of information you can find out, business professionals on LinkedIn right now are sharing more information than they ever have.
Okay.
They're more and more open about conversations, topics, whether it be with business, whether it be about growth, whether it be about something that they disagree on. Mm-hmm. They're being a lot more honest, right? And, 5 years ago, 5-7 years ago, even while I was still and getting into high school, LinkedIn was still new.
Yep.
When I was going through college, everybody said, oh, you have to get a LinkedIn so your professors can see this, or your employers can see this, which is part of it, right? But now it's turning in, people call it, like the Facebook of business, so, and it's really, if you were to take this scenario and say, if you go onto Facebook and you see family members discussing a topic and how open and honest they are, but switch it into a business setting, that's what LinkedIn is.
Yeah.
And, the algorithm it uses, the connection you can make from it, they share so much valuable information that you can figure out a lot of things with little to no cost.
Yeah. Yeah, you will meet fewer LinkedIn nerds than me. And I always say I think it's the tool with the greatest untapped potential for the largest contingent of professionals. And one of the reasons for that is most people see it as just a job search tool. Correct. I'm in college, I get my first job, I'm done with LinkedIn forever. Right. And the message I always share with college students is that I have been blissfully employed in the same job for nearly 20 years, and I'm on LinkedIn every day, either to keep relationships good, to learn from someone, to share a perspective, to learn a little more about a client or a prospect. And it is amazing to me as someone who completed college pre-internet. I'm astounded every day at what's available on LinkedIn at no cost.
Yeah.
And, generally just a couple clicks away.
Yeah, especially when they give out those, like LinkedIn will make reports. They'll do their own reports and make it knowledgeable to the public, whether it be for digital marketing, whether it be for industries, whether it be for top personnel. They just share it.
Yeah.
I think if you do your due diligence and take some time to dig into it, I think you can gain a lot of stuff from it.
Well, and the challenge I'll throw out there, if someone's listening to this who hasn't really used LinkedIn beyond job search, is take 10 minutes away from Facebook or TikTok or whatever. Those tools are good and they're fun. And not talking about the time you use as a marketer. This is your personal time.
Right.
And if you take 10 minutes away from that and you apply that to LinkedIn every day, I can guarantee you that's going to be more productive than whatever's happening on Facebook and TikTok. It might not be as fun. It's work. But if you use that time consistently over time, you will absolutely get value from it. If you don't, you probably won't.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I agree.
So we covered LinkedIn. We covered checklists. We covered not forgetting your underwear.
Applying to the wrong
applying to the wrong school. We covered a lot of ground here today, Cordell.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for doing this, and thanks to everyone who took the opportunity to listen to this episode of the Asher Marketing Podcast. We'll be back next time with another great guest, and we hope you'll join us then.